Hello, I'm LiLi Kathleen Bright, a writer with a focus on creativity and well-being. Today, I'm talking to Ian Hawkins, a storyteller whose work has taken him from writing some of Britain's best-loved comedy programs to traveling the world, speaking at conferences on innovation, technology, and personal development. I wanted to find out what makes storytelling such a powerful tool and how it has shaped his life. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Lily.
It's really good to be talking with you today. And I'm really excited to learn more about your work. You're a communicator. How has the COVID pandemic been affecting how people communicate?
Well, I think we all had this thing before COVID where we were trying to be much more cuddly and friendly as managers. And then suddenly we all had to work remotely. And the thing about working remotely, my mantra is remote working or working from home used to be a perk when it was optional, and now it's compulsory. It's people are really struggling. And I think one of the things about communication at work is suddenly we've had to learn how to be good at doing it when people are not in the room. And that means whether you pick up the phone, do a Zoom call, whether you do it on email, people have to make decisions they just didn't have to make before.
Yeah, that's so true. I've really been experiencing that myself. And you call yourself a storyteller. Why do you do that? What does that even mean?
Funny thing, Lily, is that people very, very seldom make decisions based entirely on data. People make decisions with emotions and from the gut as well. And Peter Drucker talked about this all the time. And I've found that stories are actually the software that our brains run on. A story combines facts and data and also emotion. And when you put those two things together, then you change people's minds. But we've all been in a situation where you can show people all the facts they like. If they've made an emotional decision, you will not steer them away from it.
I love that. About the stories being the software of our brains. That's really a really exciting idea. I'm curious, how did you get into storytelling?
It's weird. I started off doing a degree in psychology and criminology, of all things, and I was going to do a PhD. And instead of that, I got a phone call from a friend of mine saying, I'm writing gags for a radio show. Do you want to come and help me with that? Because I was just a funny friend from school, and I ended up going into showbiz and writing on things like the News Quiz and the Now Show and the Treatment and the 11 o'clock show. And a joke is just a funny little story. Like a knock joke is the perfect 5-act story. And from that, I ended up working with some really good business speakers, and I went around the world. I ended up, once I got a phone call from somebody saying, do you want to be a film producer? I went, yeah, okay. I ended up doing 50 films for BBC World on different businesses. And so all of these skills and my background in psychology and my business understanding all came together. And I just thought, businesses just don't understand that stories are the real thing that get people to buy. But I mean, the ones that do are the ones that make an absolute killing.
What an interesting journey! Lots of twists and turns.
Yeah, the careers master at my school would not believe it or recommend it. I don't think I do either.
What I'm curious about as well is how can you stand in front of an expert audience and talk about things you know nothing about?
Fair question. And the answer is actually you don't. What you do is you bring in your own experience, because I have found that the things that people struggle with are not the things that they are expert in. The things that they struggle with, it's that idea of, the data won't change your mind. They go, why is our product the best? And yet it still struggles in the market. I never tell people what they know perfectly well already. I just use my skill set and I bring that in and say, well, actually, have you thought that maybe your communications could be different? Have you thought that maybe your decision making is different? People don't make bad decisions because the data's bad. Usually they make bad decisions because they have all these cognitive biases going on and they've already made an emotional decision and it's the wrong one. And whenever a project falls over and you look back at it, you can see exactly why it fell over from day one. They'd already invested emotionally in a different solution, which was never going to work. Kind of opening people's eyes to that is where I'm at.
And you coach speakers and say you have techniques that can make people better fast. Care to share any top tips?
Do you know what? I will. And it's because I've talked about communication a lot, and I have 3 golden rules which will make which I think are the perfect communication. And I used to say this was for great public speaking, but as lockdown's worn on, I've gone on Zoom calls and phone calls and emails. I think it's any communication, and it's this: 3 basic things. Golden rules. Each one starts with an AU, which is the chemical symbol for gold. Trust me, I made myself a cup of tea when I figured that out. The first one is authority, which is being in charge of the space, being in charge of yourself and what you're going to say, and that you speak from a position of authority. That's the basic thing, because if you're not the authority, then why should people listen? Doesn't mean you have to be the best of the world. You just have to know what you're on about. And that's the sort of second thing. Authenticity. Brené Brown would call it vulnerability. I call it authenticity, being yourself, which is, this is my point of view. If you disagree with me, that's actually fine. I don't mind, but you asked me for my point of view and my opinion, and here it is. So the last bit is the audience, which is, you want to know what they're listening to you for, what they want to get out of your communication, and you have to make sure you give it to them. You make them a promise, you give it to them. So authority, which is being in charge for the moment. It's authenticity, which is about what happens in here, and it's about the audience, which is what happens out there. Human brain is the most complicated thing in the known universe, and getting the stuff in here into your brain, which is another complicated thing. I have to do it all through my eyes and my mouth and the words I use and my tone of voice, and it's not going to be a perfect transfer of data. But that's the beauty of being human. It's never perfect, but we all need to figure out a way to work together.
So how would this solve the problems of communication that people have been facing?
I think once you get this stuff organized in your head and you figure out that you have fitting these 3 points, then if you might decide this has got to be an email rather than a Zoom call. And if you're on a Zoom call and you see that people have put themselves on mute and switched off their cameras, you're not interacting properly. So why can't this be a PowerPoint slide? Why can't this be a phone call? And as people come back, we're going to be working remotely more and more. So we need to make sure that the way that we interact with people and the way we communicate is done in a way that is appropriate and also actually does sink in up here. So the quick answer, LiLi, is that once you understand that communication is not necessarily what leaves you, but what the audience takes in, that's when you hit that sweet spot of communications that actually works for everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, LiLi.
I'm LiLi Kathleen Bright. Why not check out my website or find me on LinkedIn? Bye.